Hello, and welcome to Covert Castaway. I'm Holly.
Je suis Stéphane.
Join us as we share what we learn and how we're making the transition to liveaboard cruising. So we're really excited. You guys hopped on the phone. We totally miss you and wish we could both be sailing together this season. But it's nice to catch up on video. Wanted to talk to you about diesel versus electrical. There's a lot of conversations about that. And, you've been on our podcast before, Vu and Bella from Blue Saga. And we're just really excited to kind of learn from your own experience about the electric engine adventure.
It's definitely been an adventure for sure. So I don't know you had any particular questions, but I'll start off with, we are super passionate about this electrification process that's happening in almost all transportation. So starting from the cars, boats are coming along pretty well. And then, of course, even planes. So we're pretty excited about that and technologies around it. So we've been an early adopter and trying to help sort of foster and move it forward. And we're glad to sit here and talk to people about, electrifying your boats.
Cool. Yeah. So what made you decide to do that in the first place? I mean, you kind of put a context around it, but what was the real decision and trigger?
I mean, we back in, I think, 2010, we started converting, we switched over to electric cars. And the experience around electric cars was so much more simple. And the usability of it, like just from day to day, it's kind of, ease of use, the
simplicity of it. Everything makes life a little easier, actually.
Yeah, maintenance, the pleasure of driving it, everything was just overall better for us. And so when we thought about converting into buying a boat, we wanted to also think about what was converting, also having an electric boat as well, and seeing what was possible at the time. This was probably about 7 years ago when we started that process. And so I think we're really early in the journey. I don't think at that point many people were actually considering electric boats. Even the company we went with our Propulsion Ocean Boat was a fairly young company back then as well. And so it was a very nascent space, and it was an ordeal to get everything built and have an electric boat for sure.
And what year was that?
So we started about 7 years ago. Now is so about 2015 is when we started the investigation process, trying to find builders, trying to find suppliers for different components. That was 2015. We officially went into contract on the boat, I think, in 2016.
Late
2016, and it took essentially 3 years from that to build. So we received the boat in 2019.
And
so it's roughly the time frame.
And back then,
what's that?
Back then, were there any manufacturers offering electrical options, or none at all?
It's the same as pretty much the same players today, and they've grown a lot. So Torqeedo is probably the more of the high-end, high-power solution. And then you got Ocean Bolt, is kind of that 45-foot and under kind of yacht solution for electric propulsion on sailboats. And those are the two main ones. And there's now, array of different smaller, newer companies come on. They're offering interesting solutions. Around the marine industry is always tricky because, you gotta, trust in the company. It's going to be reliable or not. And so my general tendency even today is I think I would go with Ocean Bolt or Torqeedo as solutions and keep an eye on some of the other upcoming, companies.
Cool.
And among the major boat manufacturers, I mean, nowadays you see they're offering some electrical options, but at the time, did you look at any kind of boat manufacturer that was not existing? The technology was there, but were they offering it at the time?
For sure not. So basically we had contact, I don't know how many, probably like 3 or 4 of the top brands at the time. You can imagine the big producers of sailboats and catamarans. And they pretty much all said no, because they would have to retrofit and redesign, engineer. And it's I can understand from their perspective, it's a lot of work and a lot of risk. And the technology was very, very early on. And so that's why we went on the path of essentially building a custom boat at that time, partnering up with a boatyard and design team. And that's how we got the boat built, and the Blue Saga as it is today.
So just to ground the conversation before we talk about the actual system you implemented, what was the size of your boat and how did you want to sail?
Yeah, I think that's always, I think the thing you need to ask yourself and answer before you buy a boat. And it doesn't matter if it's diesel or electric, whatever else it may be, is how you want to sail and what you want to do on the boat. And so for us, we had thought, at least 7 years ago, we thought a 4 to 5 foot was kind of the optimal size for a short-handed sailing vessel. So we targeted that as kind of the size. We knew very early on that we wanted kind of a fast, lightweight performance boat. And so we went with Diger boards, narrow hulls, and reduced as much weight as we could. So we had a lot of carbon in the boat. So that was kind of the basic spec of the boat. But we also wanted to have it be comfortable. And so, we designed it in a way that we feel like it's very much like a kind of a modern loft you can imagine anywhere in Scandinavia or something like that. And so we kind of put all those aspects together, a comfortable living, fast performance boat that is eco-friendly. It was kind of our, design philosophy around the boat at the time. Mm-hmm. And now we might go a little bigger. Yeah. But
how did you envision sailing, like circumnavigation, coastal sailing?
Yeah. Our original plan was, 3 years sailing, a trip and circumnavigating in 3.5 years or something like to kind of get rough. People go on a journey and they end up going for 17 years. But we kind of initially thought maybe our starting point would be like 3.5 years or something like that. And then maybe we look for something else. We're actually now, of course, we're into our 5th year of traveling and past our third year of ownership. And we haven't gone very far. So plans change, things change, life changes. And so we just kind of adapt to it. But, we've had a really great experience on the Blue Saga and our experience on the electric boat's been phenomenal. So we're happy with it.
Cool. Yeah. We decided to quit calling things plans and just call them ideas.
Exactly.
So they don't become concrete and you have expectations. Okay. So maybe give us a high level summary of the system and then, specific details where appropriate.
And just before, you ended up finding a yacht architect, like a naval architect to design your boat.
Yeah.
Was it challenging at the time to find somebody who will be on board to build an electric boat, or were they interesting with the challenge?
I think so. There's a couple of things. One is that at the time, these guys, the place we went with is a collective of guys, young, like 30-something, up and coming naval architects, and they had concept design already in place. And we saw the concept and we liked how it looked. And we contacted them, and they had designed it to be a concept that was meant to be just a fast coastal cruiser. Mm-hmm. And so we came in with hey, we want to make sure it's environmentally great and we wanted to be circumnavigating. And then we put it kind of in how we would like to live in terms of how we like to live our lives on the boat. And so we kind of added that into kind of the brief, and then we modified the boat. And, basically what Blue Saga is today is what joint effort was about. But really, a lot of the basic looks in the boats came from the Yacht Design Collective team.
And I mean, were they on board was he on board with the electrical side of it?
Yeah. These guys are super innovative. Like I said, I think it comes because they're so young. They're not like these 50, 60-year-old, naval architects that have been around forever. And they were willing to, when we talked, electric propulsion, more solar. They were talking about like even at the end of the process. I remember we were talking about like not using, epoxy or using like now you see a lot more yachts, like the natural resins and stuff like that, natural fibers. So kind of everything was on the table in terms of construction. Mm-hmm. Some of those things we talked about, we're like, it's kind of early. We don't want to be the absolute first one. We're already taking some risks, some spots already. We want to be the first on everything. And so that was, these guys are open to everything. And they're still great guys and innovating on boats.
Yeah. Nice.
Cool. Yeah. So do you want to dive into the system you ended up setting up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always call it an electric boat, but officially it's a hybrid solution, meaning we have a diesel generator to back up the electric system. So our propulsion is all electric, and it's managed by a BMS that manages a roughly 19 kilowatt propulsion battery. we have roughly another 4 kilowatt for house battery. They're all lithium. Everything on our boat is electric, so we don't have 2 fuel sources. So your cooking and stuff is all electric, microwaves, ovens, all electric. And so we don't have a propane tank or anything like that. So that was kind of the base for our kind of like the backbone of energy for our boat. Electric's going to be the main thing. It's going to be backed up by diesel. And we try to live off mainly solar and during summertime. So that's generally kind of the energy solution system on our boat. Everything else, you can imagine it's very similar to most boats today. Our boat is basically a fiberglass, carbon enforced boat. And then all of the major pieces like the mast, the 4 beams, the dagboards, some of the target stuff are carbon. So construction wise, it's a mix of, traditional glass and foam and carbon. So I think it's kind of even innovative from that perspective. And they were pushing an envelope on that part of it. And then the control systems for our boat, I think at the time we opted for the kind of the performance, racing, hardware like BNG. So our pretty much we're outfitted with all BNG gear, from the chart plotters to the radars and forward scanners and all that kind of stuff. And then I think it's kind of innovative for us. Boat our size is a full electric bus system, meaning, we don't have like all these big switches and stuff like that throughout our boat. We actually have all digital switches that you can trigger on and off. And they'll toggle on manual switch as well, which you can, in severe cases, retoggle again. So pretty innovative from that. It reduces, wire runs throughout the boat. Pretty innovative system there for a boat our size. Usually those are usually larger motor yachts usually have this kind of systems, but it was kind of nice to have it on our boat as well. Mm-hmm. All this stuff costs a little bit of money, so you kind of balance what your budget is, but we were able to go for it.
Mm-hmm. So on the trade-offs, because obviously, you add battery for the house, and that's fine. You can measure these pretty easily. But then you're like, okay, how much do I want to be able to run my boat with the electrical engine? And so, you said you set a certain amount of batteries for that. And there is the weight, there is the cost. The weight impacts the performance. So how did you guys work this out and come up to a number? What will be satisfactory to you guys?
Well, it's hard, because no one at the time was doing anything like this. And so we kind of, it's kind of a dart. You throw a dart and hope that we hit the right target.
And nothing's perfect, right? It's always trade-offs.
It's a boat.
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to, what you said earlier is it doesn't matter what boat you buy, diesel, electric, it's how you want to use it. That's what you got to answer for yourself. And so when we started, we did a series of models. And so we're supposed to be offshore and surf navigating. So we had models we're fully offshore, how long we expect to say motor on a particular day, how much energy we're going to use for cooking, how much energy uses for electronics. So we did model for that. We did model for when you're shore anchor. We still did models 4 or 5 or 6 different models. Mm-hmm. Then we looked at does that feel comfortable for us for how we want to use the boat? And then we became then we specified the solar and propulsion that the batteries that we have. There's also cost trade-offs and all that kind of stuff that factor into that as well, and weight. In general, so basically that's what I think you should always do, no matter what boat you buy, is figure how you want to use it. And for electric boat, I think there's this added cost of really focus on the energy usage throughout the different usage envelopes and seeing that would meet. It's going to always be a guess for most people because they don't exactly always know, especially if this is their first boat. But it's a reasonable exercise to do to understand if you're within the realm of how you're going to use the boat. So if you do the exercise of power consumption over a day or whatever, how you want to do it, and then figure out how much battery, how much solar you need, or how much regeneration you need from electric. I think that's generally it for how we kind of approached it for the battery size and stuff like that.
So how many batteries, how many solar panels or watts, maybe any specifics there?
Yeah, so we have 10 Valence I think 27 24 XP. So it's a long name for 24 volt batteries, lithium batteries. They're each battery is about like 1.9 kilowatt hours, and we have 10 of those. So roughly the propulsion bank is roughly 19 kilowatt total. And then the same batteries is used we have 2 of those batteries for the house. And so that's how it's set up. And those batteries are quite sophisticated batteries. So you can, if you're into any battery tech today, you'll know you can buy for electric. It's kind of interesting if you look at cars versus boats. You can get for boats. So in cars, like the Teslas buy, can get a $130 per kilowatt on the best you can get. The cheapest battery that's lithium that's trustworthy is probably like $350 per kilowatt. And really, that's like the low end batteries without any technology. And the batteries like ours on our boat, it's more like, like over $1,000 per kilowatt. So you can see the difference. This is 10 times difference between a Tesla cost and what it is for marine cost for our boat. It's super challenging for our people to adopt, I think, that kind of like cost for batteries and stuff like that. And the technology is changing too, and so it's hard for people to keep up. And the companies don't always stay in business. Like even the Balance, for instance, in the time we've owned it, they've gone through 3 ownership changes. So you never know what happens to all these companies. Especially they're small volume niche companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it seems like batteries weren't a problem. What about your solar panels?
In regards to solar panels, we have essentially 12, and I would arguably could have done more, but it's basically a function of how efficient it is on your rooftop in your boats. And so for us, we could, I think, naturally fit 12 panels so that we have something like just a little over 1.2 kilowatt solar array. And they're pretty effective solar arrays. I mean, I measured, we've had times where they exceeded ratings on them. So they're pretty good solar, and they're Sovian, I think 104 SPs or something like that. And so they're good solar panels. For us, that was sufficient. I mean, I think we kind of proved that last year in Greece, kind of our official, 3rd season, but like really our 2nd proper season. And we could achieve like charging our full propulsion in 4 to 5 days just with that amount of solar. And so you can imagine if every 4 or 5 days you can travel 10 to 15 nautical miles, it's kind of free energy. And so, how many diesel boats can refill on the water from the sun?
Especially the cost of diesel today, for sure.
Yeah, especially the cost of diesel. Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of like when I think people always when they talk about trade-offs with electric, most people, and rightfully so, talk about safety. And we just kind of overemphasize, which I think is like 90% case, which is, you're not in danger, you're living a life. What is that experience like? And that experience has definitely helped with solar and electric systems. And so like free fuel essentially coming in your way just from the sun is phenomenal. It's a dream, really. Especially if you're going to be stuck in the South Pacific somewhere with, zombie apocalypse, you need energy, and you get around, you can do it.
Yeah.
How about for the electrical motors? Like, were you getting any regeneration as well from those?
I think we did a blog, or at least or wrote about it. But in general, we do get regeneration. The regeneration from ours is, since they were built that kind of the original model. There's the new servo models these days, but the ones that we have are basically the props are folding props, and they spin the props open to regenerate. And we regenerate on them. It's most effective when you're around 10 nautical miles boat speed. And, you can get, I don't know, it varies. I can't remember exactly the numbers. I want to say like 300 watts per motor or something like that. So it's modest. I think if you get well above that, you can get a kilowatt per motor. And I don't know exactly what Ocean Bolt says is the actual top end of that. And I know I've seen videos on YouTube back in the day that people were able to get over a kilowatt per motor. But they're pretty going, it's like 14, 15 knot boat speed or something like that.
Yeah.
It's exponential. The faster you go, the more it's exponential curve up for any generation. We never had any problems. I saw your questions list about like vibrations. I think it's how it's basically, of course, there's a resonant frequency that'll happen when the prop spins, but it's probably likely or similar to your resonant frequencies for throttling. So we don't have any of those points where a boat vibrates from the throttles. So we have never had this exact same problem on regeneration as well. But again, our regeneration has been modest. And but it's also how you install, and it's very particular to a boat if that's a problem. We just never had that as a problem.
Cool. How about the diesel part? So the generator, like how did you decide to what specs and how did you make that decision?
To be fair on that one, there's not much of a decision. It was kind of like it's a function of size of boats, weight you can carry, fuel. It's all these things, right? That actually constrains you more than your desired target. I think some people argue 15 kilowatts is essentially 20 horsepower. That means, in depletion of the battery scenario, we're down to 20 horsepower. And I think for us, that works out okay. I hadn't felt in a scenario yet where we needed a lot more than 20 horsepower. And so for our use cases, it's been okay. I'm sure some people will argue that for safety scenarios, you might want more. But that's when the battery's depleted. When the batteries aren't depleted, you get 40 horsepower. So it's essentially 2 15 kilowatt motor drives.
And you're on a light boat, just to be clear. You're on a super.
Yeah, we're on a lighter boat. Yeah, although it's pretty weighted now because of all the stuff we have on it. But yeah,
Elabot shoes,
9.5 tons. yeah. This is why we talk about bigger boats, because at the end of the day, what you find is like you carry a lot more things than you expect to carry. So
maybe she followed my advice and bought an Instant Pot too.
I'm glad she did it.
What was the weight, just for information purposes, like the light displacements and kind of heavy?
Yeah, it's like around 9 ton, 9.5 ton. We didn't have exact numbers. The scale and the water line was like, I think, some low above 9 ton.
Super
lightweight.
Yeah.
But it's heavy now though. So it's well over 11.5 tons. I'm pretty sure now. We have 2 tons plus on it. So, which is getting to the max limit of that.
Yeah. I think I've kind of decided people need like 3 tons. that's kind of it.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what we have on there that added so much weight.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like the multitude of million small things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It's amazing how every little thing adds up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So just give some numbers. When do you had to move your boat on the generator? Like, what was the happy medium you chose? Like between speed and kind of diesel consumption based on the tank size you had and.
Yeah, it's. That goes back to how you want to use the boat.
Yeah.
Answer. I think when we initially looked at the specs and everything, we could, with diesel fuel and just diesel fuel without any regeneration in our battery, one time charge, we would get a range of like 600, 700 nautical miles. Which I think is substantial. You can third away across the Atlantic. But boat for us, like this is why I think for when I try to answer this question, propulsion isn't the biggest thing for us. Like the propulsion is actually the thing that we want to use the least.
Right.
And so I think if you have a sailboat, you're not sailing most of the time. It's kind of like
it's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think our efforts been, you've seen us keep bobbling around on passages that, even like 3 or 4 knots in the wind. We're willing to do that for a long period of time, where I think a lot of people aren't. And so that's how we live. But so with 700 nautical mile range with your diesel, that's sufficient. It rivals, I think, any boat that you could buy. Of course, with that said, we have much different top speed, especially our weight, our boat now being above 11.5 tons, that, our boat speed is terrific under motor. And so, our top boat speed is probably between 7 to 8 nautical miles. That's like our top boat speed today. And we cruise usually between 3 to 5. And so it's quite a modest cruising speed as well. Mm-hmm. So, and 3 to 5, actually, you probably can get more than 700 nautical miles. That was calculated based on more like 6 to 7 knots. So you can probably get 1,000 nautical miles on a modest cruising rate, which is what we generally do. In terms of like fuel consumption, it's like example, in 2 seasons, in 2 proper seasons, actually 3 seasons, all 3 seasons, it's only like a little bit below 3,000 nautical miles, like maybe 2,800 nautical miles or something. We spent probably like 600, less than 600 liters of fuel. So that's 3 seasons, all our energy on board, cruising around in the summertime, and just kind of live. And so it's very like we live modestly on fuel. We're not zero. And actually, last year was the most because with you guys, we use the most fuel. But generally, we can be very like miserly with our fuel, and we can pretty much. I would say we probably do 300 liters in multiple years that we really had to not refuel. Our fuel tank is about 350 liters, so roughly 1 fuel tank for hopefully several years. You could do it if you wanted to.
So, now that you've done this, like what lessons have you learned? I know you're thinking about a new boat.
Of course, yeah.
Because we all do that, right? Like,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And some say the best boat is the boat you have. And somehow it's like the best boat is the one you're like
don't have.
looking at.
and thanks to your support and encouragement, we've made a change. But so just in terms of the lessons you learned and what you would apply to a new boat, maybe you can help us understand that.
I think we would do it again. As a matter of fact, I think when we had we gone on this journey a little bit with Oceanville, I think we had reached out at the same time as you guys, and we even slightly touched base with them on electric, and we at the same time also reached out to several other companies on building another boat that was around 50 something feet. Sorry, not meters, 50 something feet. Much bigger boat. And it was the discussion is always on how can you retrofit an electric system, propulsion system into the boat. So I think that regeneration is kind of regeneration and fueling through solar was kind of phenomenal for us. But we also, I think what we learned, so we definitely do it again. What we learned is, it'd be nice if we could have a little more power just in case. And I think it's just not necessarily for our use case, but I think just in general to comfort, like if we had to go resell the boat, for the people who buy it next would be more comforted by it. Because I think there's a mindset people who approach sailing or motoring a long time, like this size boat needs this kind of watt horsepower. And I think just for resale, we would just probably tweak it a little bit. But it would be a function of safety too. It may be like the 0.01% safety scenario, but it would be an added 0.1% safety thing for us as well. But
I remember when the first Teslas came out, there was an actual condition called range anxiety.
Yeah. No one has it now.
People would keep bikes in their trunk or their hood, actually, like in the front, because people were really worried about range, and it ended up sort of, as people started to use it and started to understand, how to maximize. That has sort of gone away, but it seems like maybe that might be happening on boats still.
Yeah, it definitely still happens in boats because we're, in the process also of trying to sell our boat, and so we get a lot of those questions. But so we even know that it's a realistic thing for people. The funny things for me is like you think about sailing, like people have done this for 1,000 years without motors, and they get anywhere without motors at all, like nothing. And so that's kind of our philosophy. You should be able to sail. Really, if you need to, you can sail into anchor. You can sail out of a marina. You could. Most marinas won't allow you to do that. So everything's possible without a motor. And so the not everything, but a lot of things are possible without motors. And so I think it's just like one of those things where we up the power, especially since we're getting a bigger boat. We would get a bigger boat. And the solution that we have today wouldn't really be, I think, tenable for the most part for a much larger boat size.
Mm-hmm. And you did a Transpac without an engine, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're racing, you're not if there's no wind, you just wait.
Yeah, exactly. When you're racing, you can't use the motors at all. I mean, people, like the fastest yachts around the world sailing are like, without motors. So it's funny because people's mind, I think also it's not really about safety. I think that really comes down to when I drill in with people is that they're really talking about like, they just want a motor. They just really want a motor, and they want a motor as fast as they can from point A to point B.
Yeah.
When they're sitting on holiday. It really looks that's how it comes down. It's not like I'm stuck on a channel, current's like 5 knots going opposite direction. I'm fighting up like that's not really that scenario. It's really I want to get point A to point B.
It's vacation mode, like I have
exactly.
time I want to get that versus cruising mode, which is
exactly.
Unless you have family on board or something and you want to make sure everybody's having a good time.
Exactly.
Not everybody might share their philosophy on board and so
that's right. That's exactly it. I think that most people, if you drill down, they'll cite other things, but when you drill in, it's always that can I motor. And to be fair, you could look at even only the 3 seasons we sailed into the Med here. Most people don't have their sails up. Like you look on the horizon of sailboats, most people are just motoring, and so maybe motoring yachts is the answer.
That's
I don't know.
The thing, I think there's a real market for that in terms of how people want to sail, right?
It's romantic to imagine a sailboat, but most people don't actually embrace that romance. So I don't know. I think that's one thing we do is we up the engine power just because the boat's larger and we will know we'll need it for some scenarios like passing through channels and that kind of stuff for a larger yacht. And then
how large are you thinking about?
For us, you guys kind of know, between 50 to 55 feet. It just mainly, I think when we thought about what we want to do now after like 3 years on the boat is that we just want to carry more toys. And so, our performance, 45-foot performance catamaran can't carry that much weight. You're over 2.5 tons of extra weight on the boat. It's already weighing it down too much. And so I think it's just you just need kind of a bigger boat. And this is again back to what you're going to use your boat for, right? And so you just got to really answer that question before you buy a boat. And this is one where we just didn't know well enough until we lived it, and now we just kind of know we need a little bigger boat. It does take away from one of our challenges, which is we wanted a 45-foot because I think we believe, and I think it's still true, it's easier to manage. But I think if you're going to circumnavigate and be not in the marina most of the time, that a larger yacht is probably a little better. You're not dealing with so much of that, challenges of getting in a marina with a larger boat and need more crew. So anchoring is quite easy. So another big deal.
Bella, what about you? How did you find the usage, and what did you learn, or how would you think about, doing something differently?
Eat a lot of salad in the summer.
Who wants a thought?
I mean, I find myself looking at wattage more than I ever did in my life, but it's I think it becomes a fun challenge when you're on the water and think about what can you make so that is more energy efficient. Mm-hmm. So it's something it becomes a game for us sometimes.
Yeah, we actually kind of like when you're bored on the boat. And
then I think about, instead of cooking rice, I can just eat salad and make something else that takes 15 minutes to cook versus half an hour to cook. So,
I don't know. Your cooking's phenomenal. So
thank you. And then it's not really that difficult. And I honestly, I don't think we have that much stuff, but the fact that the boat is heavier, partly also because we expected to circumnavigate. So we end up getting a lot of boat parts.
Yeah.
Boat parts is like a lot of kilos, I think. Everything is a spare. Everything is, stored away. So I think, again, what Blue said is true. You have to think about where you're going, how much you want to carry, and how much comfort you want to have.
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, we're very comfortable.
Yeah, we're very comfortable.
And you anchor out there, get some wind. It's very easy going. It's not like we need AC or anything.
Yeah. It's actually quite interesting because we make it a game to manage our energy usage. So actually, in the 3 seasons, we never use our AC anchor. So during the season. And part of that is we've been able to manage without it, but also because we're thinking about how to keep our energy usage really low. So we do stuff like that. So it's kind of nice. And we also play a game where we call it solar sailing, like to term that now. So basically, because you're on a sailboat, our solar is on top of our boat. And so we got to move the sail sometimes around. If you're anchor, you can move the boom around to get a lot more exposure to the sun. So we always literally it jumps. So you get from 300 watts to 1,000 some plus watts just by moving the boom around. So there's no shadows and stuff like that.
Especially between 10 to 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you just got to tweak it every so often. You generate so much power. So there's a lot. You can make it a fun game and do that kind of stuff. And you can end of the day, you can instead of 1,000 watts generated. You can have 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 watts generated by doing that. And so, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, cool. It's kind of interesting what you're saying because, I see from a racing point of view, they build boats for specific races. If it's around, if it's a transatlantic, they study the wind and so forth. And the philosophy, I guess all new cruisers, you want to buy the one boat that's going to do your whole project. But now that I look at it, it's if you're going to spend 4 or 5 years in the Med, because that's one area that you want to focus on, and it's hard to tell, you need to buy different boats, but it's maybe you focus on one type of boat that's going to fit, more of the coastal sailing that's going to happen. And then, when you're ready to leave the Med, then, maybe that's a different type of boat. And, that's...
Especially because the med conditions, it's not enough or too much,
So specific.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you end up doing a lot of coastal cruising, hopping, just from one island to the other. I mean, except obviously sometimes, but mostly that's what you're doing. And
so there's a lot of people looking at other boats. What advice would you have, if someone was really interested in an electric boat, or what questions would you want them to ask, the boat manufacturer?
Yeah, because you see a lot of, we don't follow very closely, but it seems like there's a trend right now. Every boat manufacturer wants to show that they have some kind of electric version, or they want to show that they are as green as they can get in the fabrication, what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if you're following all
some of the boats, and what do you see? And if people go talk to those boat manufacturers there, what really pay attention to?
Well, it's kind of interesting because we actually get people sent our way to answer questions for them, which is kind of interesting. But I guess I'm excited that more boat builders are considering it, that the more that people are considering putting into their boats will drive the battery cost down, and they'll drive manufacturing of larger, for instance, the Ocean Volt system has been 15 percent kilowatt motors for forever since we looked at it 6-7 years ago. So I think next year they're going to start producing larger motors, for instance. Mm-hmm. So I think the more people adopt it, the more innovation will happen, the more production will happen, the cost will drive down, and the more adoption of all those things. So I would say to the people who are doing now or considering or passionate about do it, you're our early adopters. We're really early adopters, and they're going to be early adopters. But I think it's worth it if they're passionate about environmental creating this movement, spearheading this movement, energizing this movement. I think it's a worthwhile investment. And if we're any indication, you can live very comfortably on a boat with an electric boat. And so yes, there'll be some drawbacks, yes, you're going to be the guy might have to solve some of the problems for future users, but you're going to have a very, very comfortable life, and you're going to probably live the dream that you wanted to have in terms of an electric boat, environmentally green solution, and hopefully sailing around the world. So I think go for it. What questions would I ask producers? I think it just, in everything in the yachting industry, I think it's kind of a good rule of thumb just to stick with the larger manufacturers that have proven. And actually, I would even say even the larger manufacturers, pay attention to, if their solution's been around for a bit. New solutions just coming out, it's going to have some problems, The servo motors from Ocean Volt was a prime example of that. It was some overheating problems, some energy regeneration problems. And so I don't know if they've fully worked out all the challenges. We don't own one, but anything new is always potentially could have that kind of issues. But yeah, I think don't let that scare you away, and embrace it a little bit. Maybe you're gonna be the helping. You get to know these people really well. Boat builders, the producers of like components, like you get to know them at a personal level sometimes. That's actually really nice. And so you don't necessarily always get that when you buy the Volvo diesel thing. And that, I guarantee that breaks down probably more often than our electric motor and batteries,
Yeah.
There's so many more parts on a diesel motor than there is in an electric system. And so if you consider really, like if you talk about safety, and that's more likely a challenge than on an electric system, for instance.
On the other side, they've been there for decades, so the reliability over time has gotten better.
I agree with you. And there's a lot more people who are out there that service them, understand, fix them. But to be fair, they've been around for decades. But like Ocean Volt, Volvo, like just a few years had motor chip problem. That was that's been decades. Because it's such a complicated system, thousands of parts, new electronic gear. It's all matching together and have to work. And one of them fails, the whole system falls apart. An electric motor is just an electric motor and the BMS and the battery management system. And batteries can fail. It's pretty simple. Yeah. And so there's not 1,000 parts that can fail on you. And so, of course, now I said that we do have a gen set, so they do have some of that problem. But it's a much more simple problem. And to be fair too, it's and I think I saw in one of your questions you had, it was like, is it really true that diesel genset with the electric propulsion is more efficient than a pure diesel? And I think the answer is yes, because they actually do use it in commercial container ships in that configuration, because diesel engines can run at a very optimal rate, most output, and run the generator, the electric generator, at a very optimal level. So that you're capturing the most energy, whereas like diesel engine, there's all these rev ranges, idling, you lose a lot of power in all that process. And so when you're motoring, you can just generate as much power as you can from the generator, and then that can store in the battery. You can use that power however you want it, when you need it. So it can be very efficient. That's why we use so little fuel in 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you have any other questions? I have a closing question.
No, I think I'm just kind of looking. I think we've covered a lot of the questions. Battery capacity, the generator output, the cruising speed and range. We talked about that. The fuel tank size, The support you got. I mean, you were like very early adopters, but you said, if somebody goes sail around the world with an electric system like this, I mean, it's simple, but you have like potentially battery problems or like the electric motors. Getting support for, customer support or like to service those, or, is it something that you think might be still a concern nowadays, or
I think it's a concern. I should think concern for pretty much all.
For any
you're on a remote, any boat. Like it really is hard to get parts in some remote areas, and so I don't know. That's really an electric motor problem, electric solution problem. Here's what I'll say: that the chances of electric motor failing is very low. It's a very simple solution. You can burn them, so essentially, but that means your motor controls has to be really poor, which it's highly unlikely these days. Like it's quite proven that most of these are used from like electric cars, and so they're very well proven. So that's the one failure you could have, and it's like that's gonna be very, very rare. Like probably like 10 times more rare than your Volvo diesel engine dying. And then the batteries are probably the highest chance of failure, and it's not going to be failure where it stops working. It'll be a failure of your capacity starts fading unexpectedly. Mm-hmm. And that'll be your biggest problem. And then that is more of like a slow problem. So you can kind of, okay, I better sail more, get to a place where I can look at these batteries in a more serious way and then solve that problem. Mm-hmm. So I think from that perspective, I would feel much more comfortable with the electric boat, at least our solution, in a remote place than I'd say like a traditional diesel solution. And in terms of working on the parts, there's really nothing to work on. You got to know how the system works, but there's really nothing to work on in the solution. There's no true maintenance in that, so there's not much you can do if it does fail. But it's very rare, I think, that those systems will fail catastrophically that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's the closing question. This goes back to some of our conversations in the Ionians. So money's no object. So you can buy anything you want. What kind
I think $3 billion is what it was.
what kind of boat would you get?
I think a variation of our boat for circumnavigating would be the answer. I actually, in my mind, already have solutions that no one actually has on the market that I would solve some of the problems that we have. I think, for instance, almost all the propulsion systems out there today in the market are, I think, they're good solutions for what they are, but I think they're lacking innovation. So I mean, I think there's better ways to do propulsion that I can imagine I would build in my own boat. I think the battery solutions on yachts are just very off-the-shelf solutions that I would totally revamp using technologies from like the car industry, like the managements of the battery management solutions on these massive battery packs in the car industry is just phenomenal. Energy management, cooling management, everything on it is just really solid, and you don't have to worry as much about battery at that point. I think you worry like it's a whole order more of worry that your battery would fail in current marine solutions compared to car solutions today.
Right.
It's still reasonably reliable, but like it's a lot worse,
Yeah.
Most of them all guarantee, like most marine batteries guarantee 5 years, 80%, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But so it's still reasonable, but it's not as solid as the car industry. So I would definitely go that route. And then just maybe a larger yacht, really cool catamaran, really cool shape, much more comfortable, maybe a little bit bigger.
Bella's like smiling. She must have an answer.
No, because we already talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. It's a lot similar to our boat. We're just like solving some of the problems we see that, and solving in a deeper way than most of the industry is doing today. Because we come from the space of tech, and we can solve these problems, figure these problems out pretty easily. And where for some reason in this space, people move quite slowly.
Yeah.
And so, you could even borrow products from other places and it'd be faster than how these companies are producing products.
Yeah, there was some.
Yeah, I have a boat in mind already, but
yeah, there was some YouTube video of a guy going and stripping out a Tesla battery. And basically building a boat around it. I don't know how it turned out, but people do that. Creative, So
cheapest way to get those batteries.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for covering with us, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you guys.
And so you said you wrote some blogs. If people want to read more about certain things, where do they go to read those blogs? Yeah,
so we have our written blog, which is actually quite out of date, but it's called thebluesaga.com. And then we have a YouTube channel also called The Blue Saga. Actually, we're going to probably do a video related to this topic, but maybe the pitfalls of owning an electric boat. It's kind of like the things that you may not know about that are challenging that you might have to deal with. And so kind of do that video. Because we've done videos on the electric systems and that kind of stuff. So we'll do one for that, and then probably a couple more before the year's over on just electric systems.
Very cool. So there's a lot of questions about it. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure people will check it out.
Sounds you need to build like a consulting service company about.
I know. It's so weird because there's so many questions I get all the time. Yeah. It's a lot of similar ones, but the funny thing is, like about 4 or 5 years ago, I actually wrote to this boat that was also one of the first electric boats. It's called the Moonway. You've probably seen it. It's a gunboat converted to Torpedo solutions. I wrote to them and said, "Hey, what's your battery?" This is when we are our own system. We're trying to compare. I was like, "What's your system like?" And they say, "We don't talk to you. You can hire us as consultants, and you pay us money." I'm like, "Really? Well, there's not much of a community there, is there?" But we've been very open and trying to help people out. Friends, people we don't know, whatever. We try to help people out with information that we can provide.
It's kind of how it works. So
for sure.
Thanks for that. Okay, guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Ciao. Have fun in the US.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, like, or share with another covert castaway. Fair winds for now.